Hello, this is Debbie, and this is Light Up Your Worth. I'm so excited today to bring you today's guest, Carine Camara, and she's a lifestyle guru helping women build authentic and holistic lifestyles through fashion, beauty, and wellness. Her mission is to shift the conversation around aging and help women guide towards a path of self love and acceptance as they move through the various seasons of their life. She utilizes her years as an acupuncturist, spiritual coach, a personal stylist, and she has the most delightful podcast called Infinite Love, which helps women experience more love, confidence, wellness, and radiant, unapologetic joy. Couldn't we all use more unapologetic joy? Welcome, Corinne.
Hi.
I just love that. I love acupuncture. I love spiritual stuff and I love anything that has to do with love. So I am so excited that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we were talking a little bit ago and we were talking about how our visions of really the importance of women loving themselves, where mine is, talking about our worth, and yours is about love, the focus, the word choices that we make. And I would just love to hear how you went from, being in that acupuncture type of world into really wanting to expand out and really just exponentially increased your vision to help so many other women. So I would love to hear that.
Yeah, I'm very multi-passionate about things. So for me, the one of the reasons why I fell in love with the acupuncture or Chinese medicine as a whole is because it's a holistic practice and there are many facets of Chinese medicine. Acupuncture is one arm, there's nutrition, there's movement, which is qigong, and then there's tai chi and um, there's a massage. So it's a whole system of holistic healing. And so for me, I kind of had that mindset of looking at the body, looking at the spirit, looking at the mind, as it all needs healing on different levels. And so for me, when I entered acupuncture school, I was working on my menstrual cramps, and that was a physical reality, right? Like I was getting cramps, it was painful. And I was able to heal that with holistic healing in terms of acupuncture, nutrition, all of that. But then later on, as my life progressed and I moved to California and I started to connect with spiritual teachers and mentors and starting on this path of self love and self discovery and understanding who I am and my pains and my triggers, I realized that a lot of my pain was from an emotional space. So then that was another layer of healing where I was like, oh, okay, like my menstrual cramps are not just physical in terms of what I eat and inflammation and all of that, but it's also how I process my emotions or lack of processing my emotions, just repressing my emotions. And that was one level of the pain that was there. So then I was like, oh, okay. So this is another thing, like not dealing with my emotional pain, but then also looking at my self-loathing, seeing, oh, wow, I don't love myself. I don't love my body. This is also affecting my health. So that was also understanding that. That's one aspect of healing. And then I also looked at like my outward appearance, like how do I treat myself? Like what am I wearing that's really, is it really who I am, or am I hiding? Because there was a moment in my 30s where I was wearing clothes to hide my sexuality, to kind of dim down my light. And then when I started like looking at all aspects of my life, especially when I turned 40, I was like, hey, I want to be happy. Like, what is going on? What are pockets of my life that's not working? And I started to just pick apart things that I wanted to shift, and it all makes you who you are. We're all multifaceted humans. We all have so much emotion, so many stories, and we're not the same every day. And so for me, my practice for myself and for my clients has always been around, who are you today? Like, what's your energy today? Like, what's happening right now? What are you dealing with emotionally, mentally, spiritually, physically? Because all of that matters, because all of it is part of who you are. So healing for me isn't just one facet, because I could drink green juice and every single day, and it's not necessarily going to shift the underlying issue if I hate myself, or I don't feel worthy, or I don't feel like I'm enough. If I have all these negative thought forms, they're going to be manifesting in how I treat myself, how I treat other people. It's going to affect my career. It's going to affect my health, my physical health. Negative thoughts show up on your face, like looking disappointed, looking angry over all these years starts to age you. So there's so many things that I'm just like, no, I want to look good, feel good, and be good on the inside. And so that's kind of why I look at the whole entire system and the whole entire body and look at areas that we can heal, because it's not just one thing, it's everything. And it's kind of like you have to like kind of see different parts, which is why people go to different healers, right? They go to a shaman, they go to a doctor, they go to this, they go to that, because there's so many ways that we can heal.
Well, that's beautiful. I love that journey, that whole awareness that from starting out with the acupuncture and the Chinese medicine and how it just expanded. If when you just said, "Oh, and into my 40s, I realized," and I'm looking at you and I'm like, there is no way you're even like, people will see it on the YouTube, but they're like, if I had to guess, like it shows the work is showing because of how your approach was, and just how your beauty really radiates from the inside out. It really
Thank
does
you.
show. And um I find it really fascinating that you got led to acupuncture through something that's with our female parts,
Yeah.
because I also I love acupuncture. And when I lived in the Santa Cruz area, I actually found acupuncture because of some female issues.
Mhm.
So I didn't know that, like how you started, obviously before we're taping. And I just find that really fascinating. I'm wondering, how common really is that, where we have to wait till something hurts before we then decide to go, address it, and then to continually address not just the outside symptoms, but to get to the root cause. Do you see that in the work that you've done where,
Well, I think for me, my menstrual cramps were like a do or die situation. It was like my pain level was extreme. And so for me, I was like, I can't live my life at the age of 15 when I really was having the kind of cramps that would like not, I couldn't go to school. I was thinking, okay, this isn't possible. I'm not going to be able to live for the next 30 odd years with this level of pain every month. And so I had to figure out a way to shift it. So at 20, I shifted my diet. I went plant-based. I was like on a mission. I mean, I'm pretty much the person I am today because my menstrual cramps are so intense at the age of 15. Like if I wasn't in that level of pain, I probably, who knows what I would have been. So I feel like, God does things on purpose. Like I had intense pain because it forced me to dig for a solution. Because I would go to the doctor and the doctor was like, "Oh, take the pill." I'm like, I wasn't sexually active and I was like, "Why would I take the pill?" And it wasn't effective. And so when the doctor told me I would have to wait till I had a baby, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. That does not make any sense. And because I wasn't getting any guidance, my mom took me to my first Chinese medicine practitioner. He gave me herbs. But 15-year-old is not going to make herbs and drink it and all of that. It just wasn't practical. But I knew there was something out there that could help me. And so I just kept, and I prayed. Oh my God, I prayed every month. I was like, okay, God, I can't do this. Like, I need help. Like, I can't live my life like this. And then over time, doors kept opening and doors kept opening until I was able to find a solution. And now I'm pain free. But that took a few years, and it was many iterations. And so I feel like what really drives people to do something different is extreme levels of pain and desperation. Because if you're not in that space, then you're not going to really want to dig. And so most of my clients are people that have exhausted other possibilities, right? They've gone here, they've gone there, nothing's really shifted, and they heard acupuncture might help. And then they're like, okay, I'll give it a try. But the thing about acupuncture or any kind of holistic medicine or healing your heart or any of these things, they take time. You have to invest and you have to be patient and you have to undo all of this stuff. So it's not like taking a pill, which is what our society kind of promotes, like take a pill and be fine. but it's not, because even if I were to take a pill, like even if, let's say, the birth control pill actually helped, it's still a pill, because the minute I stop taking it, all the symptoms, all my pain, all the things that was hidden are still there. And so for me, it's really important to get to the root of why your body's reacting a certain way, what emotions are being not being dealt with. And to me, that's where the true healing is. Like the symptomology is pretty much just getting you in touch with what is happening emotionally. And I feel like the emotional and the spiritual aspect is where the real healing can take root and to stay. Because if you're just focusing on the physical stuff, it may or may not come back. And I feel like, especially with feminine issues, because it's a cyclical thing, right? It's just not like, and it never ends. So even when women are menopausal, there's still stuff that is happening within our body. And our bodies are quite fascinating as women. Not to say that men aren't, men have their beauty too. Um, but women, we just have so much all the time. And so it's a lot of balancing. And without that emotional, spiritual groundedness and really tapping into the resentment, the anger, all of that negativity that we carry that sits in our pelvis and in other parts of our body, then it's really hard to transform and really truly let it go and truly get to that deep sense of healing.
I couldn't have said that better. Wow. That's um that's really powerful as far as, really understanding that it takes time. We are a culture that does want some fast solutions to, everything used to, from cooking, where we used to be able to cook something. And then there's a whole generation. I mean, I remember when we got our first microwave, right? And now
Right.
look, now we have the Instapot.
Yes.
First when
Right.
then we went to the crock pot microwave, and now we have this the Instapot that cooks a whole roast that we just did over the weekend in 2 hours, right? Like
Right.
huge thing. So so if somebody is starting out and they're starting to they're like, oh, that's really, I never really thought about my physical symptoms as actually manifesting into something that is emotional. So how how did you how were you able, when you were first thinking about that, right, with the physical, and you were starting to really dig into it, how did you recognize for yourself that you really needed to go and look at some of your emotional stuff?
Mhm. Well, when I was in acupuncture school studying the meridians and all of that, part of what we learned was there's emotions attached to each meridian. So that's where I first was like, oh, my emotions affect my energy body. That was the first kind of opening into understanding that grief affects the lungs, right? Deep sadness affects the lungs. And then how does that manifest physically? And the lungs and the large intestines are connected. So then if you are suffering from a lot of grief, you can have bowel issues, you can have lung issues, and lung issues can also manifest as skin problems. So then I started to kind of create an understanding of the patterns of where emotions kind of live in the body. It's not always exactly 100% because everyone's unique, so their emotions can live other places, but it starts to give you a little bit of a roadmap. And then I started to become fascinated on, oh wait, where does this live? Where does this live? And of course, reading books like Louise Hay's and all these other books where it's like, okay, your thoughts manifest in your body, your emotions manifest in your body. And then I started to understand, okay, like if I feel a certain way, this is what's happening physically. And then also tapping into my body was a big part of that because I want to be happy and radiant and I want to live long and healthy and in my body and I want to avoid, I'm all about preventative. Like my whole life is like, how can I prevent not getting this? How can I prevent not getting this? Literally, since I was like a teenager, when I learned that people get cancers and diabetes and heart disease, I was on a mission to be like, I want to avoid all of that. So what can I do to avoid it?
Wow.
And so I've always been like, okay, meat gives you this. Okay, I'm not going to eat that. Like I've just been somebody that's how I think. It's how to avoid things. So, and that's why I love acupuncture because acupuncture is a really amazing preventative medicine. You get acupuncture treatments. Most people come to us because they're sick and they're they're going through a problem. And I say, come when you're healthy. That's the best time to get acupuncture. Because if you're healthy, we're going to keep your immune system strong. We're going to strengthen your digestive system. Everyone needs tweaking. Nobody is at a perfect state of health, right? You have a car, you have to constantly put gas in it. You have to constantly get it you have to constantly get maintenance. The same with the human body. We always need maintenance. And as we get older, we need more maintenance.
Ain't
Like
that the truth?
more maintenance.
Yeah.
And so you can't like sit on your laurels and be like, oh, life is good. No, you have to exercise. You have to eat well. You have to work on your mindset. You have to release your emotions. There's all these things. You don't have to do it, but if you don't do it, there's definitely some health consequences and some physical consequences. Like, for instance, I never had knee problems. I was a dancer, athlete my whole life. I never had knee problems. All of a sudden, a few years ago, I'm like, oh no, my knees are hurting. Like I get up, and I'm like, oh, my knees are hurting, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm getting old. And then I started working out. Like I was like, okay, let me go to the trainer, do some squats, start working on my deadlifts, and start working on building more muscle in my quads and back muscles. And now my knees don't hurt. You know what I mean? But I didn't have to do that when
Yeah.
I was 25.
Well, that's so interesting
Yeah.
because I had just, I would say in the last like 5 months, my knees started to hurt. So I
Mhm.
went to one of my reference books and finally broke down and went to go read it. And it was talking about moving forward in life.
Right.
And I was like, darn it. Why is that stuff always right? Right. Like,
Yeah.
because
Sure.
transition. And so the podcast, I work on, uh, I've been focusing more on the transition, right? As women, as we go through different transitions, especially over a certain age, it's
Mhm.
sometimes we get kind of stuck in where we're going, or,
Right.
or even though we know things will work out, what is it going to look like? And sometimes we can get mixed up with the emotions of it. So I find that's fascinating that you were able to realize that too, and then go and work on it. Because now my knees aren't nearly hurting like they were, and all I did is start walking more.
Mhm. Right. Right. Movement. I think it's
Hmm.
one of these things where like it's not, at least for me, I'm understanding that movement isn't really optional. Like it's kind of like brushing your teeth. Like if you're not doing it, then it's gonna really build up quickly
Yeah.
as we get older.
Right. Like I had,
Yeah.
I'm a big walker, and I had kind of gotten into probably a habit that I wasn't really, um that I probably shouldn't have fallen into, right? I'd kind of fallen off the wagon, as I say, with my walking or daily walking and getting out. And I was spending a lot of time at my desk. And though I have a desk that goes up and down, I wasn't bringing it up to where I could actually stand for
Mhm.
part of the day.
Mhm.
And that habit starts more sitting, and it kind of just, next thing you know, you find yourself in these moments where you're like, oh no, I think I need to need to do something about that. Or
Right.
here's the little symptom, go look it up, what's now popping up. But I agree with your whole maintenance of coming in, and when things are all good.
Mhm.
I'd gone to a my acupuncturist in Reno. It was about 2 years ago, and I had relocated there, so I had to go find myself a new acupuncturist because I love acupuncture. And I went, and I was having some severe, like I had cough and went instantly to bronchitis. And I had been to the medical doctors, is where I'd started. And then I finally paused and said, okay, what do I really need to do? I need to go work on whatever this is. And she was able to really help way more than any antibiotic did. And then I just continued my wellness. And she's just a beautiful acupuncturist. So I would highly encourage anybody who's listening, if they've never tried it, it's not painful at
Not
all.
usually.
No.
I mean, it is a needle, so I mean, there is the thing where like it doesn't hurt for the most part. However, if your body is tense and tight, it can be a little bit more painful.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I love is when I'm on my stomach, and she does this thing on my back just to kind of move around my energy. And I walk out of there so relaxed and just love it. So um I'm interested in finding out how does somebody go about identifying for themselves too if they're maybe they're not loving themselves, you know?
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, how do people identify if they're not loving themselves? Um, I would say you don't feel good. Honestly, for me, the biggest thing that I've learned about self-love is that love feels good. And I think all of us can identify that. Like we when we've fallen in love, we feel great. You know, when we're around family members that love us and friends that love us, there's a certain level of just you just feel good. And I want to feel good. I just think that's like for me, I was like, I just want to feel good. I just want to feel okay in my body. I want to feel comfortable no matter what environment I'm in. And so focusing on feeling good and whatever that means to you is always a good place to start. And and I want to differentiate between feeling good and like what your ego, what your mind says feel good. Like I'm somewhat of an emotional eater. So eating a bag of chips I would say, oh my God, if I eat a bag of chips, I'm gonna feel good. Not we're not talking about that. Like that. So I think you have to kind of understand yourself. I think it's going inside yourself and having a little bit of self conversations to really understand what feels good to you and really going underneath that desire. So if I'm reaching for a bag of chips because I feel that makes me feel good, why really? Like what about the chips is like what's going on? Is it really about the chips? Is it really because it's crunchy and fried and it's a bad taboo? I mean, there's so many different things, but ultimately I know that chips are not great for me health wise, right?
Mhm.
And so and I've worked hard to kind of differentiate pleasure from food because that's a place where I can get mixed and I can be like, this makes me feel good. And it's like, no, it really doesn't. And so that's not the feeling good I'm talking about. I'm talking about the feeling good in terms of feeling relaxed in your body, feeling seen, feeling validated, feeling included. I think that's a big part of like love
Mhm.
is like when you are with someone that loves you, you feel included. And most people don't feel included in the world, which is why there's so much pain because they don't feel included in what's happening. Like I feel left out or I feel less than. So I think it's really about understanding what feels good to you in that space and like focusing on someone that loves you and what that looks like for yourself and how you can start to love yourself in the way that you want to be loved by someone else. Right? So if you have this
Mhm.
image of like, oh, I would love a man or a woman or partner or whoever to love me in this way, then you should ask yourself, do I love myself in that way? Like, am I someone that do I like gifts? Do I give myself any gifts? Like, if you start to think about it, then you're like, oh, actually, I never give myself a gift, but I always want someone else to give me a gift. Then I would work on buying yourself some gifts, like, something like that, where it's like, okay, like, I want to, anything that, I mean, I don't know if people are into love languages, you can think about it from that standpoint. But I go back to my basics is just like I want to feel comfortable, I want to feel good, and I want to give the example of how I want to be treated. Like if I love myself and I treat myself in a certain way, people also respond to that. Also, people are like, "Oh,
Mhm.
okay," and then it creates a different energy ultimately around you.
It's interesting that you mentioned the love languages because I think it's a really good starting point for, that quiz that he gives in this book about just even understanding the type of love that we like to receive
Right.
to give us kind of like a bit of a roadmap of where to at least go start
Right.
of, when you realize that it's about touch or if it's about the gifts or if it's about somebody doing something nice for you.
Mhm.
I find it's an interesting spot to know, if you like to receive gifts. I love what you said about, well, am I giving myself gifts? You would like to get flowers. Do you buy yourself flowers
Exactly.
when you go out to Trader Joe's? Are you? They make them pretty
Amen.
affordable.
Right. They're pretty cheap. Yeah. I mean, and that's what I mean. It's like I feel like it's so important to be the love that you want to receive and be the love that you want to give. Right. Because if you love yourself in that way, then it's easier to give to others. Right. And
Hmm.
also the thing also I like to say about loving yourself is it's a journey of uncovering things that you don't love about yourself to turn them into loving yourself. For example, like judgment. We all are humans are pretty judgmental in general, right? But then if you can start to have compassion around your own self-judgment, which we all have, and really love your the parts of you that you feel judged, that you judge, then you have more grace to be less judgmental to others, right? So if somebody's going through something that you usually would feel judgmental about, you can be like, "Oh, I've been through that within myself and I've been able to like have grace for myself." So somebody's going through something similar. Normally you would be judgmental, but now you're kind of like, "Oh, okay. I understand he's having a bad day or something." It allows more grace
Hmm.
because you're more compassionate to yourself, which gives you more space to be compassionate for others. And that's why self-love is so important, because if you don't have that ability within yourself, you can't really offer it to anyone else. So the self-love journey is, of course it's important to have like the rituals and the baths and all this self-love stuff, but really for me the most important part about that journey is uncovering these painful emotions and being able to work through them with love that gives you more space to hold other people when they're going through something similar.
Hmm. You know what I have found when you talk about that love is that as we as women particularly, and this podcast is primarily 85-90% women, is that women can build really good habits and patterns and structures to help you know start looking at their inside beauty and their outside beauty, and then they hit a bump with transition.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Hmm.
And then you realize, like, oh, I stopped washing my face at night. Like, how did and brushing my teeth before I, collapsed into bed. Literally, like not just go to bed, but you're collapsing into bed and not taking some of the basics of taking care of ourselves as in transition. So I'm sure you've been through a few transitions in your life.
Hmm.
And
A
have
lot.
found yourself. I know I think I'm not alone when I say I think anybody in transition, especially us as women, we have a tendency to sometimes pause that, or even some of the small things, not maybe not all of it, but then you have to pick yourself back up and realize that that is all part of loving ourselves. And have you had that experience as well, where you've had to like realize some of the small habits that you've created or patterns and structures, and how have you been able to help yourself get back into that and realizing this is all part of loving myself?
Well, I think in those transitional moments is where I rely on friends, like, and people that love and support me, because I feel like sometimes in the deepest part of your pain, you're pretty much in a victim space. And so those transitional moments could be drown or die kind of moment, like drown or survive, because you can either sink into this depths of despair and kind of stay there for a while, and some people never get out, or you swim to the top and get a lifeline. I think um, one of the biggest ways of healing is to open up yourself to others, because I think it's really quite difficult to heal on your own. And so in my transitional spaces, I was blessed to have amazing friends and people that really love me and see my potentiality and see the goodness in me, that gave me that lifeline to pull myself out. And of course, I still had to do the internal work, but they gave me a chance to get out of it. And so I think it's important when you're going through anything is to open up yourself to life and to the opportunity for people to help you. Like
Hmm.
sometimes that looks like hiring somebody, like hiring a coach or a therapist, or relying on a really important friend, having conversations with God if you're religious, or spiritual, um, finding ways to get help. Otherwise, I feel like transitions can kind of suck you under. And for me, when I moved from New York to California, that was a huge transition. I like gained like 20 or 30 pounds. It was like I broke up with the boyfriend. I left my life. It was just like this whole big thing. And it was like by the grace of God that I met new amazing friends that helped me make that transition easier. But we're always going through transitions. Like when I turned 30, that was a huge transition. 35, 40, like life, pivoting my business. Like it's a never ending. And I think for me, what makes it manageable is to stay grounded on what my core values are. Like, okay, I want to be a loving person. I want to change people's lives. I want to help. I want to serve. Like having that be my beacon has helped me through my transitions because okay, I'm like, okay, I'm transitioning to be able to get to this point. Like having the bigger picture in mind has helped me. Um, Otherwise, it's hard for me. Like I'm the kind of I'm a tend to be a depressive victim, kind of negative person. If I don't pull, if I don't, if I'm not able to pull myself out, I can stay in that deep dark hole. And for me, the ways of getting out of that have been always for others and for myself, right? How can I be a better human so I could help more people? And that helps me get up in the morning because I'm like, okay, if I love myself, focus on myself, heal, I could help other women that are going through something similar. I could help other people that are going through something similar that don't maybe are not blessed with the level of resources that I have, right? And so that maybe listening to this podcast can help somebody, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, I love that. I love those two. The two suggestions I noted was understanding your big picture. It's really important. Well, why are you going through the transition?
Yeah.
Whether it's something of your choice or something that you didn't choose, but there's always so many opportunities in, depending on how big the transition is, like your move from New York to California. Wow, that's big,
Hmm.
right? Really big. I mean, completely different cultures of our United States and just how people show up, right? And how they
Right.
think and here's the puppy gonna come join us. and and being able to really understand your values.
Yeah.
I I think it really opens the door too to really understanding what are our values and which ones kind of shift or adjust as we get exposure to um, different places. Like if we use your New York to California experience, I'm sure some of the values that were more like New Yorkan versus California, that you were able to then examine what does that look like here and now. And
Yeah.
um, there's so much potential in understanding what we value.
Hmm.
And when people are hitting against our own values or beliefs or and how we're able to still love ourselves. What I find really interesting is that in your own development, your career path, yourself as a whole woman, is that you are also helping with some of the outside stuff, the fashion and the beauty, which may not be, and we've talked about the wellness, but it may not be so obvious to some why you would expand into that. And so what I want to point out as I want to dig into that some is that you are a very radiantly beautiful, put together woman. And so when we first came on camera and for today is that, and viewers will see it on the YouTube, is that her colors that is wearing really radiates everything about her makeup, her eye, her glasses, her shirt, her background. It is all perfectly put together to really enhance your features, your strengths, and just and how that can impact you loving yourself when you are put together. So I would love to see, learn more about how did you then integrate that part of it to really help others too, because
Yeah.
that's so powerful, I think,
Yeah.
for us to understand.
Well, I think for me, it's like understanding that, like, I wanted, going back to myself, right? Like, I wanted to show up as as me, right? So when people see me, they see the whole entire essence of who I am. And my clothes accentuate who I am. So the colors I wear bring out the brightness of my skin. It brings out my energy. So when people see me, they're like, oh, they can absorb me, and it's not anything that's conflicting. If I'm wearing a color, because we're all affected by color. Color carries vibration, and every person has a different level of vibration. And so a color that matches your vibration accentuates you. If you're wearing a color that isn't, then it could then take your energy down, right? And so these are subtle things that we all kind of are affected by with our own energy and our own body language, that we are all affected by each other. So when someone shows up in their color and the clothing that fits them, their makeup that fits them, and their whole style matches their essence, then you're like, wow, who's this person? Oh, what's happening? Right? Because they can fully be present. And not only that, you as a person in that space feel comfortable. Like you're comfortable in your clothing, you're comfortable in your body, you love yourself, and you're feeling, okay, I feel sexy, I feel good, I feel confident. Right? But if you're wearing something that you don't feel good in, you don't love your body, you're trying to hide something. So then you're going to reach for colors that are not necessarily good colors for you. So then that means it makes your skin look a little pale. Like then you're like, and then you're trying to do something that's not comfortable. So then you can't even show up for who you can't show up and be present, because part of your consciousness is focused on how you look and how you're being perceived, and not feeling comfortable, not liking this or not liking that. You can't really be present for somebody else when your mind is on that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's why it's so important, because our outward appearance affects not only how we feel about ourselves, but how other people take us in. And we're all social beings. Everybody wants to feel loved. Everyone wants to feel valued. Everyone wants to feel seen. And everyone wants to feel attractive. Bottom line, this whole world's about sex and relationships. And that's all people really think about, right? It's like,
Yeah.
honestly, like I mean, a few of us think about other things, but for the most part, all of us want relationships and some kind of affection, if not sexual, but at least platonic and familiar, right? Humans are just all about connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so how can you have the most connectivity with people is like when you connect totally with yourself. If you connect totally with yourself and you feel confident, you feel good, then people relax around you because they're like, oh, I could be me too. And then you can have these real conversations where you feel comfortable, and it allows people to feel comfortable around you. Right. And then if you're somebody that does this kind of work, people are then like, oh, well, how can I do that too? Right. I want to be comfortable too. And then that's where the conversation opens.
Mm-hmm. And you can really visibly see it, whether it's in person. If we just focus on, in person, with when somebody does walk in the room, you don't see them pulling up their pants or fidgeting,
Mhm.
with what they're doing, or, constantly fixing themselves because they're going to have a wardrobe misfunction, or,
Right.
like it really shows. I I've had my colors done, and I don't want to downplay the colors. I actually hired a professional myself in
Mhm.
the Bay Area, and she was amazing, because we end up throwing out like 90% of my wardrobe. 90%. And I didn't replace it all at once, but every piece that I have is part of that color,
The color palette. Yeah.
the color
Mhm.
palettes. And I have a custom color palette.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to bring it when I go shop. I don't have to, right? But man, when I made that, and I can look at the pictures from my professional pictures that are a few years old now, and to the times where I'm not doing that, I would rather wear the same 5 shirts, if that's what my budget is, and know that I feel confident in them.
Right.
It's super, super powerful. Like,
Mhm.
so I think I can really see it, like when you came on, and I could instantly tell that you knew that. I mean, besides reading your bio, right? I mean, but if I hadn't read even if I hadn't read your bio, I noticed it the first time we talked.
Yeah.
because it really does show. Um, and I think it's just such an investment. I think every woman should meet with somebody who helps them at any age, you know, learn how to do that. I know I recently have been watching some YouTube videos on makeup over 50
Right.
and, mistakes not to do. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm making all these, like it's time for me to go in and now invest in learning some different techniques with my makeup and different colors. And so I love that you're able to bring that in and then how it really shows up in our own confidence
Mhm.
and how that shows into where you want to love yourself more.
Yeah, I mean, it's I feel like sometimes the conversation about going inside yourself, like self-love and all of this emotional pain for some people tends to be too painful or too difficult, or it's like it's not an attractive thing. So it's a lot easier to go from the outside to go in, meaning, okay, let's talk about your clothing, let's talk about your hairstyle, let's talk about your makeup, because those are outward things that that's like a tangible thing that can be changed. Like you can imagine going to a store and buying an outfit. But then can you really imagine like forgiving your ex-husband? That's a lot harder and it's a lot more painful. And it's like your emotions are already like getting triggered. But I can go to a store and buy a new outfit. Right. And so
Mhm.
going to the store, buying a new outfit, looking at your body and being like, okay, like having someone being like, okay, this is your body type is this. These are the clothes that look good on you. So then you can be like, oh, okay, like, wow, I look great. Oh my God, this is great. And that could be like a crack into you feeling better about yourself. And then now you're looking at your ex-husband being like, oh, okay, it didn't work out, but I look good, you know? And then it's like, then it becomes this like, right? And then it becomes this like
Yes.
thing where you can start to shift how you feel on the inside because that outward appearance created a crack. Right. And it's not like we're looking at the outside being like, oh, you should look a certain way or you should do this or do that. It's really about how can your outward appearance shift the way you think about yourself so that you can go inside and be like, oh, actually, I love my body. I want to learn how to love my body because these clothes make me feel good. Right. And then you could start to see like, what don't I like about my body? How can I start to shift that conversation and accentuate the parts of my bodies that I do love? So then it becomes a different conversation that you're having with yourself more than just like, oh, let me sit and meditate about how to love myself, because that works for some women and works for some people. But sometimes the tangible actually can help shift what's happening on the inside.
I agree. For anybody who's ever bought a nice new pair of shoes or
Hmm.
a lipstick,
Yeah.
or how do you feel after you've had your hair done?
Right.
Like I'm going to be cutting my hair. I have really long hair. And I have a sister who's going through some treatments that where you would lose your hair. And so I'm going to be cutting my hair
Hmm.
really super short. So I have a few friends helping me like figure out, well, how could I do that? Like, I
Yeah.
don't, I'm not really a pixie kind of person facial wise, but
Yeah.
what can I find that's
Hmm.
that short for this
Hmm.
season, and loving
Yeah.
support
Yeah.
and still feel beautiful, right? Like
Exactly.
still feel because I like long hair. I've had it shorter and personally I like long hair. And so being able to do that, it's external,
Hmm.
but that whole feeling, I still want to be able to carry myself and not feel, like self-conscious or not, not believe in myself with feeling loved. So I think you're so right on with the whole tangible stuff of how we can start on the outside
Right.
because you got to start somewhere.
You have to start somewhere, and that's a place that you can hold on to, and it can kind of be your pillar. Okay, I'm doing this with the intention of loving myself and finding my authentic voice and being my authentic self and having my essence of who I am shine through my clothing, through my makeup, and through my presence, right? And not have those physical things be a barrier for people to see who you are.
Mhm.
Right. I think that's really the theme. It's like so it's not just like, okay, I'm going to focus on this. It's like, no, we're focusing on you. You
Yeah.
are the important part, and these outside parts are just whatever. But your
Mhm.
soul doesn't have clothing, your soul doesn't wear makeup, right? This human body does.
Hmm.
And so how can we make your human body comfortable so that your essence and your soul can shine no matter where you are?
Yeah. And then once they go get that work done with you, what they need to do is go get some professional pictures done
Yes, that's always nice.
with all of that.
Mhm.
I mentioned my pictures are a couple years old, my professional pictures, and I'd never had that. I had the colors, all the clothing done, my makeup, and then she did my pictures.
Nice.
And all I said is, I just want to feel beautiful. And, at 50, you go and have your first professional pictures done, whether you need them for a business or not need them. Wow, can they
Mhm,
change how you feel? You see how somebody else can see you
mhm.
when you're all there. Highly recommend it. My Bay
Yeah.
Area photographer is Lindsay Miller. So she was amazing. And I'm sure you have people that you work with,
Mhm.
that can help them.
Yeah, and absolutely there's something called boudoir photos,
Oh,
which I've
yes.
never done, but I really want to do because it seems like really an amazing experience. And for those that don't know, boudoir photos are kind of like these sexy photos that are like that you would normally take maybe before your wedding or something where you're wearing like lingerie in front of the vanity. I mean, and they're not meant to be like erotic or anything. It's more just to celebrate your sensuality. And I
Hmm.
feel like that's something that older women just don't do as much because for a lot of my clients, they're like, oh, I'm over the hill, whatever. I don't really, I'm not in touch with that. But I had one client that did it in her 60s and it totally like shifted her whole space. And I was just like, that's so cool. And they're for her, that no one else is looking at these photos.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just thought it was so cool because it made her feel like different. Like it made her feel like, yeah, I can be sexy at 65, you know? And so I think it's important to also get out of your comfort zone and do things that not and totally for yourself. Like it doesn't have to be these types of photos, but I think it's important to do something that kind of pulls you out of your comfort zone so that you can learn new aspects of your personality that perhaps have been hidden all this time.
Hmm. Yeah. Isn't it interesting as we age, or, at a 60-year-old, I'm closer to 60 than I am 50 now.
Yeah.
And, how it can shift like our own sensuality of feeling that even at whatever age that we can still be sensual.
Right, right. And I feel like culturally it doesn't feel that way. Like culturally it feels like you hit a certain point and then it's like, okay, we're done. And that's so not true. I mean, women are living longer, we're having longer lives, and we outlive men. And so it's like there's so much life for us and it doesn't really stop. And I think it's important to celebrate all aspects of you because our sensuality and our sexuality is an aspect of who we are. And it doesn't matter if you are of any age, if you're suppressing any aspect of who you are, you're not fully expressing who you are. So
Hmm.
you could be suppressing your happiness, you could be suppressing even your anger, all your negative emotions, like anything that's suppressed kind of does not allow you to be your full presence. You don't allow yourself to be your full present self, which is important, I think anyway.
Yeah, it is. I would love for people to be able to know how to reach you,
Yeah.
and highly encourage them to reach out, especially for that. If they're not close by. I know you're in the Bay Area, but they're not close by to be able to do some work with you. You do remote work with like the stylist part of
Yes.
what you're doing too. Oh, and
Yeah. For sure. Like, so my website is CarineCamara.com, and you can definitely get on that website on my website and see the services that I offer. If you are local to the Bay Area, I offer facial or cosmetic acupuncture, which helps to uplift the face and helps with the body elements as well as help with reversing aging on the face. So that's a service I offer in the Bay Area. And then I also do one-to-one personal styling where we go over your closet. We do a closet audit. I help you with your colors, your body style, and give you some product suggestions that would work for you within your budget. And also I'm launching a new lifestyle brand that's called Carina, which is going to come out next month in April. And this is going to be a lifestyle brand that's specifically for women over 40, celebrating our aging process. And there'll be lots of tips and deep and videos and content around beauty, fashion, and wellness.
ooh, I love that. I think I need a trip to the Bay Area. I think I want that acupuncturist to help me with my Almost 55 skin.
Well, your skin looks great.
It's the lighting. No. And it's the color.
Yeah, the blue is one of your
Yeah,
colors for
this is
sure.
definitely one of my colors, right?
Mhm.
So
Totally.
I wear it, my 5 shirts that I wear, but it's okay because it's my color.
Yeah.
So I absolutely have loved this, of really loving ourselves and sending so much love, and how we can start on the outside, right? There's no the judgment, or start on the outside and work our way in. And it's so powerful with your message that you're sending out, right? For us to love your background, as you are loved, and you are so loved. And I really want people to tune into to your podcast, the Infinite Love Podcast, because it's really, I'm learning stuff, and it's just really good conversations. So thank
Thank
you for
you.
joining me on mine,
Yeah,
as
thanks for
as
inviting
we
me.
do the whole light up your worth, and feel, how worth is tied into loving ourselves, and how it shows up, when you love yourself. It just makes it so much easier to hold your own boundaries, to love yourself, to know, help with your decision making, you know, surrounding yourself with people who can really value you too, and are
Right.
there, um, and can help you when you, have lost your way a little bit, or are having a bad day, for goodness sake. They can just kind of cheer you up, or you can, cheer each other up, because you can see that beauty,
Mhm.
and the kindness within. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.